J Briggs, an author and specialized in consciousness and the connection to ET UFOs. He recently published a book is titled Spiritual Consciousness, a Personal Journey. Kevin, um, can you tell us how that happened, that connections, this channeling, and what kind actually is that channeling? Non-human intelligence, extraterrestrials, what are they?
Okay, well, thank you for the introduction, Ivan. It's great to see you again. Like you say, we are good friends, and we do keep in touch from the last time I was on your show. So thanks again for inviting me. I think possibly I should just start from the beginning. So if there's got some viewers here who haven't seen me before and don't know my story, it started when I was 8 years old. Two beings. I was taking a bath at home, and there was a change in the frequency within the bathroom. I looked to my right, and two beings appeared, materialized in the bathroom, frightened me to death, as you can realize, as an 8-year-old boy. And I've come to know these two beings now. Their names are Ot and D. They are Arcturian. They are fifth dimensional beings, and they've educated me throughout my life, giving me different experiences with non-human intelligences. With the Arcturians, some from the Pleiades, some Greys, and some other beings, a bluebird being. And so lots of different beings that I've had lifelong contact with now. It's just normal for me. It's just part of who I am. So, but we're talking about channeling today, and that's it's quite interesting how I fell into channeling. I was aware of it, but it wasn't something I was particularly wanting to do. But a few years ago, my guides asked me to go down to a conference in Orlando, and I live about 40 minutes from Orlando. And I didn't really want to go. It's for a MUFON conference. Anyway, I went, and when I was there, I met, I realized I was going there to meet somebody, but I didn't know who. And I met with a friend of mine now, Dr. Melanie Barton. I met later on with Kathleen Marden and Denise Stoner. And I'm just leading up to how I got into the channeling. So we were having a chat. We met for lunch afterwards, after the conference at a local restaurant. And we started chatting about my contacts, bearing in mind they didn't know me then. And it's, I say, a few years ago now. And then I was invited back to Kathleen Marden's home. We went back there, and we were just talking, and I was giving them some information that had been given by the extraterrestrials. And then Denise picked up on it first, I think, and said, Kevin, do you know what you're doing? I said, no, what am I doing? She says, you're channeling information. And then, so that was really the very first time the information had been channeled through me. And anyway, what we did after that meeting, we decided to meet at my home. And I live just around the corner from Kathleen Marden. No coincidence there. She's only 10 minutes away. And there was Kathleen Marden, Denise Stone, and Dr. Melanie Barton. They came round to my home. We sat in my large living room there. And Melanie did a meditation. And then she said, right, has anybody got any information for us from the extraterrestrials? And everybody said no. And then Melanie asked me, she says, Kevin, have you got any information? I said, no, not that I'm aware of. She says, well, are you sure? And I said, well, nothing's changed really, except there's a male entity stood in front of me to my right-hand side. She said, but that's part of the psychic abilities. We were able to. So she said, well, who is it? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. She said, well, ask him. Oh, I think I said, I'll ask him. So I asked who it was. And it was Ort, the male that appeared in my bathroom when I was 8 years old. And he started speaking through me. And he spoke through me for 40 minutes. 40 minutes he spoke, Ivan. And that was the first channeling I'd done. And when he'd finished speaking through me, I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. The energy that it took. And I was surprised because it wasn't something I had planned. So that's how it started. And then what we did every month on a Saturday, we would meet at my home. We'd have about a dozen questions, and we'd ask whoever came through these questions, and we got the answers. And the answers were, my wife recorded some of them, and Kathleen Marden recorded some of them. And then Kathleen Marden wrote a book just recently, if people can see that, Forbidden Knowledge. Well, in there, about over 100 transcripts of the channelings that I did over a 2-year period. So if anybody's interested in what those questions were, then that's a really good book. So that's how it started, and I still do channeling. I don't do it as often now because we finished after the 2 years. We finished the channeling at my home. I am asked to do it occasionally, and in fact, I think there's a pilot movie coming out with Ray Hernandez, and there's a couple of channels that I did in there. One of them at Kathleen Marden's home. So that will be. And if you want to see the trailer for that, if any of your viewers are interested, if you go on to www.agreaterrealitythemovie.com, then you can see the trailer for that. And that's the story of Ray Hernandez and his contact with non-human intelligence.
Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry for interruption, but
that's okay. No.
This start happening super interesting. So that being, you saw him when you was 8 years old, and when you saw just recently, he was the same age like you saw before, or?
Yes, he doesn't change. He did tell me. I asked him how long does he live, or do they live? And he said 300 years. But that's 300 of our years. I'm sure when they're off planet, the time goes slower, according to Einstein's theory of relativity. I think he says that as you're away from the planet and you go away for a number of years and come back, time is different. It's relevant to where you are. So yeah, they don't change. They look exactly the same now as they did when I was 8.
Where is locating his planet?
He's from Andromeda. That's what he tells me. Okay.
Another question. So when you get in contact with that thing, he's coming in your mind, and this connection is like a telepathy, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's they're actually using. They call it dual conscious physical communication. What happens is my conscious energy moves to one side. I allow his conscious energy to enter my physical body and then use it for speaking. So they call it dual conscious physical communication. But it's a form of telepathy, I'm sure, yes. And as we know now with the Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell's telepathy tapes, that we humans have telepathic abilities. I know that's within autistic children, but it shows that I know I have, because I've had it from childhood, and there are many others that do. But now we can talk about it because it's in the scientific arena. It's no longer woo-woo to talk about telepathic communication. So that's a huge step forward for us as a species to accept that now. And if anybody hasn't seen those tapes, they're on YouTube. Just put in the telepathy tapes. I think that's it. Telepathy tape. I can't say that word.
So when that being take your body, renting your body for a moment, when you're speaking, you eventually speak with your own voice, or?
Yeah, it is my own voice, but there's a change in the frequency of the voice itself. You can tell that someone else is speaking. It's not me. And I don't always remember what is said, Ivan. I get bits of it that I remember. And that's why we recorded all the channelings that I did. And there's a couple of channels. I think there's 2 channels on my website, kevinjbriggs.com. If you go on there, there's one I did with a good friend of mine, Susan Schatzer. And then another one I did down at Ray Hernandez in Miami. at one of his conferences. And there, so if you're interested in channeling, you can go and look at them. And then there's another one on the Exo Conscious Community website, and that's www.exoconscioushumans.com. And the one on there, I channeled Ra. Now, Ra is a 9th dimensional being, and so you can watch that there. And his energy is tremendous. So if you're interested, you can go to those different websites and watch me channeling. So yeah, it's I still think it's fascinating, Ivan, that our non-human intelligence, different levels of consciousness can communicate this way. It's really quite fascinating.
Yeah. During this connection or contact, do you remember actually? Do you have a memory how this contact going on? Do you remember everything or?
No, I
Okay.
only remember parts of it. And that's
Okay.
why we record it, really. In fact, when I read through the transcripts after we've done it, the things that I'm saying, very often information that I don't know or didn't know. And it's fascinating to read through it because I think you can tell it's a different person. It's not me that's speaking. So it is quite fascinating, really. And I think
Yeah, it is.
it's well known now in the different circles that some people do have the ability to channel, and not just extraterrestrials. They can channel deceased family members and things like that. I think So
Oh, that is possible.
I think so. Yes, I think so. Yeah. I mean, all they're doing is using frequencies of consciousness for the communication. And I know that our deceased family and friends are still alive at the higher levels of consciousness, because when I was a lot younger, 15, 16, 17, 18, I would go and visit them on a regular basis out of the body, out of the physical realm, and go and interact with them. And I did that for over a couple of years. So yeah, I know they're there, but really that's a different form of it's mediumship. It's connecting using consciousness, the same conduit as I use for the channeling, but we tend to term it mediumship. Yeah, I've received messages from deceased people for family and friends after they've passed. That's not my role here. I'm not a medium per se, but it's part of the skills that I have that have been developed. And in fact, one of the most interesting ones was I was out with my dogs one day, and a beautiful rainbow appeared at the front of my property. And while I was just walking, Edgar Mitchell, who'd passed a few months earlier, he spoke to me. He identified himself and asked me if I would convey a message to a good friend of his, Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. And I didn't know, I'd never heard of her then. And I said, yes. He gave me the message. This is an example of mediumship, really. And I didn't know how to get in touch with Rebecca. So I asked Dr. Melanie Barton, I said, I've got this message from Edgar Mitchell for his friend Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright, but I don't know her. And no coincidence here, Ivan, but she said, I think Kathleen Marden knows Rebecca. I'll ask her to send an introductory email. So Kathleen Marden sent it's all part of this big picture. Sent an email to Rebecca. We spoke by email, and then we had a phone conversation. And then we became good friends. And now I'm a member of an Exo Conscious community. We meet, and we have met once a week for over 2 years now. We have a discussion with other people that have contact with the non-human intelligences using the mediumships and all these abilities that we have. But when you come together as a group, it's quite powerful, the information that you can receive. And so again, it's really, we're being guided by these non-human intelligence, the extraterrestrials, whatever label you want to put on them. They're here. These particular ones are benevolent towards the human species, and they're here to help us evolve, which is what they are doing by giving us this knowledge of consciousness, by communicating with us, by bringing the different groups, the different individuals together to convey the message to society, really, to our human species.
How you reach this level of consciousness to be able to make these communications?
Well, really, I think it's through meditation itself. If you relax and open your mind And then as a child, I didn't realize I was meditating. What I used to do as a child, I was looking for answers. And I would just find a quiet spot in a room somewhere, relax, and then I would look inward and continue to look inward. And as I'm looking inward, I would then see like an eye appear. And then I would then change direction and move towards the eye and then go through the eye. And from there, I was on the astral plane. So I'm traveling out of body, left my physical body behind. But I didn't realize that was a form of meditation then. I obviously do now. But I did it naturally because I was curious. I was inquisitive. I wanted answers to things and I couldn't find the answers. So I went inside for the answers, as it were. And from there, I expanded my own consciousness, because the consciousness, I've been told, are just frequencies. The dimensions are just frequencies of consciousness. And once we realize that and we can access that ourselves, then it gives us a greater reality, a new reality that encompasses the non-human intelligences, the extraterrestrials, the deceased family and friends. It just opens up a broader aspect of who we are, really.
So this contact's happening spontaneously, or you asking for contact, or they just contact with you?
Both. I can have a direct communication with them. Like yesterday, a couple of days ago, I woke up and they gave me a message. I'm just getting out of bed, and they give me a telepathic message to introduce two friends of mine together, because they also needed some information. They each had some information. So then when I got up that morning, I sent them both an email. I gave them the information. Yeah, but I can also reach out to them and ask them a question, and they'll answer me. They don't always answer immediately. Sometimes they do. And then other times they'll wake me up. Very often over the past few years, not so much now, but they'll wake me up at 111 222 333 444 a.m. They wake me up, and I always look at the clock, and it's one of those times. Then they'll give me a telepathic communication, which we can talk about now because it's accepted. But what I used to do then, I don't do it so much now, but I don't need to. But I would get up, I would then walk into my bathroom, and from my bathroom I could see a street light. And I said, "Look, you just woke me up at 111. I was fast asleep. You've given me this telepathic communication. Can you confirm the information has come from you and it's not just my own imagination? Can you turn that street light off as confirmation?" And the street light would go off immediately. And then vice versa. If they woke me up and it was daylight, I'd go into the bathroom, I'd repeat the message back to them telepathically. I said, "Right, can you confirm the information has come from you? Turn that street light on." Bear in mind it's daylight, and the street light comes on immediately. So that's the level of contact that I have, which I'm sure we can all achieve once we understand how consciousness itself can be utilized for communication, for travel, for healing, for education, for creation and co-creation. And when we do that, we can communicate with them at their level of consciousness. So really, we're just improving our communication skills, really.
Can you ask them if they contact with me, or maybe some of them cousins contact with me? Because I had weird experience. I mean, several weird experiences. When I'm not doing my real job, I'm doing Uber. And one night, I pick up one passenger. He asked me uh, to give him a ride to a hotel in Salt Lake City. And we stop in the light, waiting for green light to continue, and we talking to each other. And then I heard in the back side of my car, in the back seat, two guys is laughing. And he heard the same thing. And he said, "Who is laughing in your car?" And I said, "There is nobody." And the same time I hear just...
Well, I mean, that's a good example of obviously tuning in to those higher levels of consciousness. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah, oh, without a doubt. Yeah. And once you realize that, there's communication around us all the time in nature, but we don't always see it. We're not open to it. I've got an interesting story in using consciousness itself to communicate with butterflies, My brother's a retired aircraft engineer. He's a nuts and bolts guy, and he also lived in the UK. When he retired, he moved down to Spain, and I'm talking to him on the computer or on the phone sometimes. And he said to me, Kevin, you should see the size of the butterflies down here in Spain. They're absolutely huge. I said, look, this is an example of communication with using consciousness. He said, they're absolutely huge. I said, well, why don't you go out onto the balcony and ask them to come and land on your hand? And being an engineer, a nuts and bolts guy, I said, no, they won't do that. I said, well, indulge me. I said, indulge me. So he went outside. I said, right, hold your hand out. And I said, ask a butterfly when it comes past to come and land on your hand. But you'll need a reason. Say the reason is that you want to have a look at the beautiful colours on its wings. So he held his hand out like this. And I've got pictures of this. And a butterfly came and it flew past. And he asked it. It flew out of sight. It turned around. It came back. And it landed on his fingers. I said, right. Now what you need to do, ask it to go away, but you need a reason. You want it to come back with a friend so you can compare the colours. Bearing in mind he'd been there for 3 years and he'd just been watching them flying backwards and forwards. So he asked this butterfly that sat on his fingers and he said, can you go away and bring back a friend? Because I want to compare the colours on the wings. It took off, it flew out of sight. It came back, it landed back on his fingers and he brought a friend and it landed on his forehead. I've got pictures of this, and he had 12 landings of butterflies on him that day. Then the following day, I think he was showing off to his wife, who's now passed. He said, come on, let's go outside onto the balcony, and I'll ask the butterflies to come and land on you. So a butterfly came flying past. He asked it to come and land on his wife's arm, and I've got pictures of this as well somewhere. And she had butterflies come and land on her arm. And so what he was doing is expanding his own knowledge in relation to consciousness. And that affects who we are then when we're able to do that. And it's the same with the plants, the trees, the animals, the birds. They all have communication. And really, we have the ability to tap into their consciousness, as we did with this simple example with the butterflies. And my brother, I call him the butterfly whisperer now. So, and he'll tell you that story exactly the same. And it was interesting when his wife passed, they had the usual ceremonies, celebration of life and all that, and then the funeral. And then he went to Scotland, where she was from, to spread some of her ashes. And they've had all the other ceremonies that they needed to do. It was just him and one of his sons. And he spread the ashes. And as he spread the ashes, he saw a butterfly flying past. And that will be a representation of his wife's consciousness, I'm sure. And he asked the butterfly to come and land on him. And it landed on his son's head. And it was winter time. The butterflies weren't really out. But again, another example of consciousness and communication. So, like I say, it changed him. And he now tells that story himself, if you ask him.
Mm-hmm. Another time, I was in Starbucks and I bought a bottle water, sprinkle water, Italian, and put it in my table, and I started doing something with my laptop. And when I decided to drink water, the bottled water not was there anymore.
So I missed what you said there, Ivan.
I was in Starbucks.
Yeah, I got that bit.
Okay, and I'm purchased water from the Starbucks, put in the table, start working with my laptop, and then I decide to drink a water, and I start looking for the bottle, but bottle with the water not was there anymore.
All right. Well, that's an example. That's a prime example of the non-human intelligence changing your reality by moving that bottle. That happens to my wife on numerous occasions. She'll be cooking in the kitchen, and then she'll put something down on the countertop, and then she'll turn away. She'll turn back to pick it up, and it's disappeared. Or she'll go when the sun comes down later on in the day, it comes through the blinds, and when she's cooking there, she go and shut the blinds. But then she turns around and the blinds are open again. And that's the guy that does that is Zark. He's a small grey. He's a mathematician. He's an engineer. I know him quite well. He's from the Pleiades system. And I asked him why he did it. where he moved her personal items around the house. And he also lined up her shoes in the walk-in closet all the way around the baseboard, the skirting board, right neat pile all the way around. And I asked him why he did that, and he said he thought it was funny. He liked teasing her, but there was a serious side, and it was to let her know that we are here, we are amongst you. So this is the level of contact that we have, and anybody can have if you open up your mind to these higher frequencies of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. So what kind beings or something connecting with me?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but clearly they are connecting with you, probably because of the work that you are doing. So you can give your examples of what's happening to you, and you've just got to ask them. But then you have to be aware of the fact that they are reaching out to you. But if you ask them who they are. But then you have to be aware that you might be given a thought. The telepathic communication is quite simple, really. If you have a thought and you put it out there into the universe, then the thought that comes back is the communication. And that's where people, they don't trust their own thoughts. They think it's their thought, but it's a thought coming through consciousness, or using consciousness as a conduit from the star families. And how I learned to be proficient at telepathic communication was every time I received some information, I would say, right, you've just given me all this information of something I know nothing about. They gave me a download of the quantum unified field theory, which I knew nothing about. And I said to them, look, you've just given me all this information. Can you show me a craft to confirm that the information has come from you? And a big craft appeared immediately outside of my pool cage. So I went inside to get my wife, and I said, come outside quickly, there's a craft, come and have a look at it. She came outside, we went outside of the pool cage to have a closer look at it. Another one appeared, 3, 4, 5, 7 craft appeared, flew silently over our heads, and then changed direction by about 80 degrees, and then disappeared sequentially as they had arrived. And now I've done that obviously with the street light as well. That's one thing I do. And another time I got a download of the theory of everything. And again, I said, look, you've just given me all this information. Can you show me a craft? And a craft appeared immediately, and it flashed 1, 2, 3 times and then disappeared. But when you do that all the time, and I've even done it with butterflies, I've been given information and I said, look, you've just given me all this information. Can you show me a butterfly? And a butterfly would fly past like that, turn around and come back again. That's the level of understanding of consciousness that we all have. But we have to practice it, we have to learn it, and then act on the information that you're given. Like when I woke up the other morning and I was asked to connect these 2 friends together, I could have ignored it, but I didn't. I took the time. I contacted each one. I then sent them an email with the information. So really just conveying the work that they're doing in bringing people together, bringing groups together, bringing individuals together. So clearly you're part of that, Ivan. That's why they're giving you information. So now you need to ask for more information. Dreams are a very good modality of consciousness that they use for communication. Very often I'll go to bed and I'll ask for something and they'll give me the answer within the dream state. And that's a simple thing that we can all do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when they deliver information to you, it's a private for about private things, or it's about the human inhabitants in this planet, or what kind of information is it?
Yeah, they've been giving me quite a bit of scientific information. They also explained to me the quantum unified field theory, and then they explained the theory of everything, and then they gave me a download of an equation for calculating the frequencies of consciousness in each dimension. Part of the education was telling me that dimensions are only frequencies of consciousness. So they've given me this equation for calculating these frequencies. And that equation will be published in Ray Hernandez's book, the 5th volume, I think, A Greater Reality. So if anybody's interested in that. And then they gave me another equation for calculating the void of consciousness, with an explanation how creation of timelines or co-creations of timelines are created from the void of consciousness itself, with an equation. And if anybody's interested in seeing that equation, if you go onto the www.exoconscioushumans.com and then go on to gallery, there's a friend of mine, Aurora Belcia, and she's sketched the group of 8 extraterrestrials that I'm in contact with. And on Zach, who's the mathematician, on his T-shirt is the equation for the void of consciousness. So, yeah, so they're giving me scientific information. I suspect to put it out there so our scientists can look at it. I know the void of consciousness equation. I was actually asked by leading scientist Sperry Andrews to ask Orton D what they knew about the void. And that's what they gave me. They gave me the equation with the explanation. I gave it back to Sperry Andrews, and he understood the equation. But he was a leading mathematician. Unfortunately, he's passed now, but a leading scientist within consciousness himself. But it's really how it's really connecting us all together as individuals, as groups, to expand our collective consciousness as a species. And it's not just me. There are many out there now, many experiences that have been given information along a specific line, and then we're brought together sometimes to share the information like we're doing now, Ivan. You're helping me share the information with others, and you're receiving your own information. And now after this, you can ask for more information, and I'm sure you will get some extra information that you can utilize and use and share with others. Yeah.
Long time ago in Bulgaria, one 13 or 14 years old boy, right now he's 30 something or maybe 40 years old now. But in that time, he'd been visited from extraterrestrials with UFO, small size. But he said when you went in, the size just expand.
Right.
I mean, was huge. So when you was in, he saw in the display numbers like a formula. And I'm going to, it's somewhere in my computer. I'll find out and send it to you. So maybe you have some idea what means that. But he memorized this formula. And when I talking with him, he told me about this formula.
Right.
And so, I mean, that time, I mean, that was, I don't know, 1989 or something like this, or maybe 1988, something like that. And this time, I don't have enough information. We don't have any computers. We don't have internet at that time. And so I just was a blind. The only one thing I knew that if there's if UFO landing somewhere is changing the radio activities is changed. It's not the same like the normal. And the only one thing I done, I got the Geiger meter, and I went to check the area, and really where the craft was landing, really the radiation over there was high.
Okay.
So that was the only one proof I can have.
Right.
And the other thing is, I mean, that kid in this age, how it's possible to create that imagination to say outside craft was small, but when they invite me to go in, was huge.
Right.
It was huge, not like the size from outside. So I believe that he really had this contact.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I mean that's. I have heard similar where people have been onto crafts and they go inside and they're huge. But I do know that they. In fact, I've had the opposite of that as well. I was one day I hadn't heard that. I call them the Council of Eight. That's a group of ETs that I've had contact with all my life, and I hadn't heard from them for a couple of weeks, and I was trying to reach out to them, and I was unable to. So I left my body. And I went looking for them. I went traveling all, I didn't go anywhere out of body. And I went looking for them. I came back and I couldn't find them anywhere. And I went all over. I came back into my body and I woke up. When I woke up, all 8 were in my bedroom looking down at me. But next to them was a full-size mothership, full-size thing. And I said, look, I was a bit annoyed actually. I said, look, I've been out looking for you. Where have you been? They said, yes, we know. That's why we're here. This is one of the lessons that they gave me. That's why we're here. I said, but how can you have a full-size mothership and all 8 of you looking down from the ceiling in my small bedroom? And they said that they explained space, time, and dimensions, and they were manipulating the space, time, and dimensions. So that was the reverse side of what that young boy saw. He went into this small craft and saw it huge. Mine was the other way around. On that particular occasion was the other way around. They made it small to fit in my bedroom. So, but I do know they do manipulate time, because when Zark moved my wife's shoes in the closet, in the main closet there, I said, did you pick them up physically and move them up? And he said, no, I moved the atoms in space, time, dimension. So that was an example of manipulating space and time, really. And that's what they do. They have the technologies to do that. We don't have that yet. I'm sure we're working on it, but we don't have that yet.
And maybe the craft have this ability to make these changes, these transformations, because one of my great friends, Clifford Stone, he passed away a few years ago, 3 years ago. He shared with me his experience during the crash area. He was there, and he was the first guy who going in the area to make research. And he said because during the crash, the craft had some kind of gap. I mean, enough for him to look in to the gap. And he said the craft outside looked small, but inside was a huge space, huge space.
Well, that's an example of manipulating space-time dimension, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and actually that was confirmation for me that this boy from Bulgaria, he really had a contact.
Yes, and that's the beauty of experiences like myself. We share our stories, and we each have a small piece of the jigsaw. And when you put those pieces together, you're seeing a larger picture. And what they're really doing, the benevolent ETs, the benevolent non-human intelligences, are educating us collectively. But they don't give it just to one person. They give a little piece to lots of individuals. And then as we are speaking, then we share the knowledge, and that affects our collective consciousness. We are expanding that. And then we can learn and move forward.
And one more thing about me. Several years ago, I attended a conference, UFO conference in Utah, Vernal, Utah. And because Paul Hynek is also very good, my friend, and he was there, and he said, do you want to have some very interesting experience? Of course, I said yes. And he introduced me to another man. And this another man, I have in my phone somewhere his information. He said some equipment. He said it one equipment's in the room, one room. And I went there, and usually that's supposed to have a bed, but because there's not a bed, I just lay it down in the floor, and my head was on the pillow, and he put in my something like a headphones, and on the top of my head was a light, is blitz light, like blick, 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 and he started playing music, and he said, close your eyes, just stay relaxed. And I did. And eventually, maybe after 10 seconds, I start seeing in my mind different kind geometrical figures moving, like squares, pyramids, circles. I mean, so many different colors. And I said, how that happening and what's going on? And after that, that was just for a moment. I don't know how many seconds was that, but then just gone. And there was completely dark space. I haven't seen anything. I mean, when I say see, my eyes was closed, but nothing is appearing. And then light show up. And then after light is gone, and then was something like not exactly dark, but darker. And then I saw a face in this side. Oops, in this side. I mean, my eyes is closed, but I saw actually not face. I saw only the eyes and smart part from the nose. So something like that. And that eyes or head of that thing is doing like this. Looks like watching me with some curiosity. And because I'm like this, and I start moving in this way, uh, because it's a physical reaction or some intelligent reaction to look more about that. And, and that thing just gone. And then I saw the same thing in the right side, the same eyes, and just a little bit from the forehead and a little bit from the nose. And that was so incredible. And I don't know what's going on. And when that finished, I asked the man, what happened? What I saw is how that happened because of the light which is blinking, or maybe because the tunes, I hear it. He said, actually, that device activating my alpha and gamma um waves or something like this, and that's it's about the consciousness. And I saw this in my consciousness, not in my physical reality or the physical world.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a great example. Well, I do that without listening to the music, just by meditating, by raising my frequencies of consciousness themselves. And when I receive telepathic communication, I also receive visual images of where that person is. And if they're with a group of people, I might see the whole group. And also within the communication, so I get the telepathic communication, I get the visual communication, and it's like watching a TV screen for me. But I have to keep within those frequencies. Oh, bless you.
Excuse me.
Otherwise, I will lose the connection. And then obviously there's emotional communication as well within the telepathic communication. So yeah, what you're describing there is raising the frequency artificially. Well, I can do that naturally. Because I've done it all my life, and I've developed those abilities, the human abilities, and we can all develop them. But I know I've got a very interesting example, because they didn't sit me down in classrooms and give me lectures and things. What they did, they gave me an experience. Sometimes it was a joint experience. And this particular experience demonstrates really what you're talking about. Our normal routine at home here, my wife gets up first, she feeds the dogs, and then goes and sits and has a cup of tea on the pool deck. I get up, I get a coffee, and I go and join her. On this occasion, I woke up in the morning. I thought, I'll see if I can contact the Council of Eight. And I relaxed, I opened my mind, and I wasn't able to make contact with her. But I contacted a small craft that was in the area. It was a disc-shaped metallic craft. And flying the craft was a small grey that I know. His name is Tia, and he was transporting people from A to B in this craft. He had about 7 other greys with him. And as I'm speaking to him telepathically, I see him visually flying this craft, and I see inside the craft. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, well, we've deviated off our flight path because we wanted to come and see where you lived." So we had a little bit of conversation, and then he said, "Right, we'll have to go now. Like I said, we're off our flight path." So they left. Nothing unusual for me, all part of that telepathic communication. But then I went outside with my coffee to meet my wife on the pool deck, and she said, "You missed the most beautiful rainbow this morning." I said, "Oh, did you get a photograph?" She said, "Yes, I did." So then Then she said, but you never guess what happened next. I said, no, what happened next? She said, while I was taking a photograph of the rainbow, a craft appeared under the rainbow. I said, well, what did it look like? She said, it was dish-shaped, it was metallic, and it was round. I said, oh, right. So then I said, did you get a photograph? She said, yes, I did. And so I had a look at the photograph, and the time on the photograph was the exact same time on the clock in the bedroom when I was speaking to Tia. So that was confirmation, not only for me, but for my wife as well, that that communication is coming from them. So that was a lesson in relation to the telepathic communication, the visual communication, and them including my wife within that. And that particular story and those photographs are published in a book by Jason Gleaves called UFOs, I think Up Close and Personal, I think it's out of print at the moment, but he's trying to get some new copies printed. But that particular story is in there. But that's how they educate me, by giving me an experience. But I'm able to use my, what we now term in psionic abilities. I always referred to them as psychic abilities, psychic intelligence, intuition, knowing. Well, they're now, our scientists are now calling these abilities psionics. So I'm using my psionic abilities to communicate with the non-human intelligences. And again, it's something we can all learn to do. It's a human ability. It's nothing special other than I've just learned how to do it.
One more thing, super interesting. I mean, for me, it's interesting. I was in New Orleans, Louisiana, for my work, and I walk in the street during the day, so it's day. And in that street was only me. I mean, nobody, there's not any people walking around, just me. And then I heard a voice who said, Ivan, Ivan, Ivan. And I started looking around, but it's nobody there. And I said, no, I didn't say anything. I said, and continue walking, and the same voice, with the same voice say, Ivan, Ivan, Ivan. This is the second time in my life when I heard the voice. One was before, when I was 20 something in Bulgaria, and I because my house is just separating with the street to the other house, and the other house is my cousin's house. So I just cross the street and go to the other house, and the stairs, I was in the stairs before to go in the house. I heard a voice who say, your place is not here. I remember that very, very clear. I remember that. So what is these voices? And
Well,
what are differences? I mean, it's maybe 30 years differences, or 40.
Right. Okay. But clearly, it's a form of communication. Someone is reaching out to you. And I don't normally hear voices. Although I had an experience not so long ago with, I was at a friend's. We're going to do a CE5. And I was one of the first there. Gary Bors is a good friend of mine. And he said, oh, Kevin, he said, just go inside, help yourself to a drink out of the refrigerator. He said, you're the first here. He said, I'm just tidying up outside and I'll come and see you when I've finished. So I went in, and as I reached it, he said, there's nobody in the house, it's empty. So I went to the refrigerator, I reached in. As I reached in to get a drink, a kind of juice or something, I heard this voice say quite clearly, is that Kevin? And I said, I said, yes, who's that? And there was no reply. So then I walked into the living room, which is where I heard the voice come from, and there's nobody there. Anyway, I thought, well, that's strange. But so then I went to the bathroom then. And when I was in the bathroom, the lights in the bathroom started flickering like this, you know. So it was really them reaching out to me, giving me an example of hearing their voices, as it were. But yeah, it's I don't know. When you've got telepathic abilities, you don't need to hear the physical voice. But I've also had communication via the small walkie-talkies, and that's very interesting, because I was at Gary Bors again doing a CE5. He's a CE5 facilitator. and the craft come in and show themselves on a regular basis to him, and his contact is amazing. And he's a member of the exo-conscious community as well, with the Rebecca Hardcastle Wright. So, but on this occasion, he put some radios out, but we all sat outside around a little campfire, and the radio in front of me was chattering. And I said, "What? Why is my radio chattering, or the one in front of me?" He said, "Oh, that's because they want you to pick it up and speak into it." So I picked it up, and flippantly I said, "Is there anybody there?" and it crackled. And Gary was telling me, when they crackle, it's once for yes, twice for no, three for maybe, and then lots of crackles, meaning they're enjoying the communication and just enjoying the atmosphere, as it were. Mm-hmm. So I had this conversation, and I'd just been talking to Ort inside the home. I'd done a channel, and I said, so that reminded me, I said, "Oh, is that Ort?" And it clicked once for yes. And then Dr. Melanie Barton, she was there again. You see, she was sat next to me and said, "Can you give us a verbal audio that we can hear to?" And we heard a female voice. So I said, "Is that D?" That's Ort and D, my two guides. Click once for yes. So then we had a conversation using these walkie-talkies with known extraterrestrials, Ort and D, who are Arcturian, fifth dimensional beings from Andromeda. So I think that was probably a first, speaking with these radios to known extraterrestrials. And Jimmy Blanchette, he was the first person to introduce the radios. And within his communication, he gets there's mathematics in there within his communication. So, but it's fascinating how they're reaching out in all these different modalities of contact that they are using. So, but interesting again, you know, if Melanie hadn't have asked that question, "Can you give us a verbal sound?" instead of just the click, we wouldn't have heard the female voice. And looking back at that voice in Gary's house that said, "Is that Kevin?" that sounded like a female voice to me then. So I suspect it was probably D. But all just to get us used to communicating with them using our psychic abilities, or psionic abilities as we're calling them now. So yeah, all fascinating stuff, Ivan. And clearly you're part of it as well. They're giving you similar experiences, meeting similar people who can confirm your experiences. And that's how it works, I think.
Yeah, so for my audience, I suggest to make some exercise for them, for me also, of course. If I would like to make contact with another person telepathically, I need to imagine how his face, and then thinking and asking to communicate with me, to come on the phone. Is that how work that?
You could try that. I'm sure there's very many different methods using telepathy to communicate. What I do, I just relax. If I'm wanting to communicate with somebody or see where they are, see what they're doing, I'm able to do that. But that's quite common. It's a form of, it's remote viewing. It's a form of using consciousness itself to see somewhere else. It's part of the duality of consciousness, the entanglement and the non-locality of it that allows us to do that. And if you practice that, we can do that. I did a recent, I went to see a friend of mine, Alan Steinfeld, and he was doing he teaches remote viewing, and he was giving an example of remote viewing. And I got a couple of the things correct. And then the last one, I got it spot on. It was a brown clay pipe. And it was a perfect description of what he had in his pocket. And that was a remote viewing exercise. So we all have these. And other people that were in there, they got the remote viewing. They saw the different things as well. So it's nothing special to be able to do it. You just got to learn how to do it. It's an ability that humans have. So yeah. And I think our governments, our CIA, they've been using psychic abilities for psychic spying, I think they called it in the 50s and 60s. And so they know it's real, but it's kept hidden from us. But now we know that we can remote view. In fact, I was speaking to somebody the other day that, you know, their whole family remote views one another. one was saying you could never hide anything from your mother because she always knew where you were and what you were doing, because she'd have a lunch. She said, when we're having Sunday lunch, we're all sat around the table, and you didn't have to ask, can you pass the salt? You just have to think, oh, I need some salt, and your mother would pass you the salt, So we have these abilities. We just don't talk about them because in the past it's been considered woo-woo and you've got mental health problems. But now we're moving forward with this because of the work of Dr. Powell.
So basically, I believe everybody believes that we're really not alone in this universe, even in this planet.
Exactly. They are here. It's like, there could be somebody stood next to me now, as Art did on that first channel. I couldn't see him, but I could feel the frequency of him. And as a child, I was always susceptible to feeling these frequencies. I was sensitive to them, and that's part of it. So, but again, it's an understanding now, because I've been told that the different dimensions are frequencies of consciousness. So you can't see their physical unless you get into the same frequencies. And I have had Orton D materialize him in my bathroom, materialized in my bedroom, and had conversation with them in the physical. So they can do that. They're using technologies, I think, to do that. I'm not certain on that, but I think they are.
Yeah. So with the end of this conversation, was very nice to talk with you. But what you can say, like conclusion of everything we're talking today?
Like conclusion would be, I suppose, we are not alone. We know that now. We're aware of that. The extraterrestrials that I'm working with are benevolent, and I see within a lot of the information that's put out there is the fear factor, the national security threat factor. Well, my ETs are benevolent, and I say there's a group of 8 of them. They are part of the Galactic Federation. They have told me that. They are here to assist with our evolution, and they want to reveal themselves globally to assist with that. And when we have open contact, they will share some of their technologies with us to help us clean up the pollution that we have on our planet. So these are quite exciting times, but we have to invite them here. And I've been inviting them. Others are inviting them, because the reveal itself will come from a request from the citizens of Earth. And as we learn to use our telepathic abilities, we can invite them to meet with us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. You're a really very good friend. And this show or this conversation, I think, was very nice. And I believe very helpful for everybody who is looking around for contact, telepathy, physical, any kind of contacts. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ivan. I've enjoyed chatting, as I always do, with you. So we have an interesting conversation. So thank you again, Ivan.